The MCU may have some of the coolest scenes and costume design out there, but sometimes the original designs look even cooler. Movies take months, if not years, of planning, reworking, and designing, especially when the stakes are as high as they are with the MCU. And while the MCU has an amazing finished product, that doesn't mean that there are some amazing concept design works that didn't make the cut. The saying goes with writers, you must kill your babies, and sometimes that's just what Marvel had to do, killing off some what would have been spectacular moments and designs to make way for the others.
You're still on that? I told you, no. The answer is no. Forget it.
In this video, we'll take a look at some of the best concept art that for varying reasons were cut, from an alternate weapon origin to heroes on different sides of the Civil War, to some more comic-accurate costume design. These concept designs would have changed the entire MCU. Captain America: Civil War may be one of the best movies in the MCU, pitting the Avengers against one another in Team Cap and Team Tony. But it took a while for the teams to be finalized. During the development stage of the movie, Marvel were still trying to figure out who would be on which side and who was on the blue team or the red team. In an early version of the movie, Ant-Man, aka Scott Lang, was on Team Iron Man, while Vision was on Team Cap. The latter on paper does seem to make a lot of sense, especially with there being a love story set between Vision and Wanda. In one of the coolest pieces of unused art from Civil War, we see Vision taking on Iron Man. As Tony presumably goes to attack Wanda, Vision comes up behind and puts his hand through his suit to disable it. Wow. Talk about overkill. If Vision had been on Team Cap, then they could have, in theory, blown Tony's team out of the water. But if Ant-Man or Giant Man had been fighting alongside Iron Man and co., then it may have balanced the scale. But it was ultimately decided by Marvel that it would be unlikely that Scott would have joined Tony, seeing as what his mentor, Hank Pym, thinks of the Stark family.
I spent half my life trying to keep this technology out of the hands of the Stark.
But that picture of Cap clocking Giant Man in the face is pretty damn cool. There is no question that Avengers: Infinity War was an insanely entertaining piece of filmmaking. With great battle scenes to that shocking twist, Infinity War will long live in the memory as the MCU at its finest. But that doesn't mean it was all gold, and one scene in particular comes to mind. Having Thor and the Guardians meet up was a stroke of genius, with the chemistry being palpable between the two camps. But as Thor's story arc to get Stormbreaker with Groot and Rocket is kind of wanting. The storyline was kind of dull and wasted a fine actor such as Peter Dinklage, and especially as this was meant to be such a big moment in the movie, it fell rather flat. What makes it worse is the fact that originally it was meant to be a lot more exciting. In a piece of unused concept art, we see Thor and the two Guardians battling Midgard Serpent's children for the weapon, which was initially intended to have been lost in the head of the fallen monster. The idea was when they go to leave with Stormbreaker, they are attacked by the serpents and are left there to fight their way out. It's unclear why Marvel decided not to go down this route. Maybe it was too expensive and tricky and would have taken too long in an already convoluted movie. But it is a shame that this fight scene never got to take place. Black Panther isn't exactly in need of a cooler costume, but his father's one was almost even cooler. In unused concept art for a suit designed specifically for T'Challa's father, King T'Chaka, we see a pretty different costume design. In the concept art for the costume, it's equipped with a cape, but Marvel decided to go down the Edna Mode route of no capes and went away with it.
No capes! No, go on. Your new suit will be finished before your next assignment.
This also meant that the high collar went away too, and upon reflection it does arguably take away a feeling of authority and regality that the costume holds. The design also looks somewhat fiercer than the final product, but you could argue that it also looks reminiscent of DC's Caped Crusader, Batman. This may have been a cool design, and arguably more fitting to the character. The final version is definitely nothing to scoff at, and Black Panther continues to be one of the most badass looking characters in the MCU. Another costume that was also almost very different was one of Marvel's most iconic, as Marvel brainstormed the next costume for Spidey to wear in Spider-Man: Homecoming, meaning that Marvel's head of visual development, Ryan Maynarding, ran with several different looks for Peter Parker to wear. But one of the most interesting was the inclusion of the Scarlet Spidey suit. The costume has much darker tones, and it is almost a flipped version of Miles Morales' costume in Spider-Verse, with a predominantly scarlet suit with flares of black and blue. The spider on the chest is also a lot larger, taking up a majority of the space. The inspiration for the costume came from Humberto Ramos' Superior Spider-Man comics and is more than a fitting tribute. The costume does look great, but Marvel instead went with the classic red and blue look with touches of black and a smaller spider on the chest. Maybe that's because there is already too much Scarlet in the MCU, with Scarlet Witch and even a Scarlet Spider with Scarlett Johansson's Scarlet Sandwich. Oh, where am I? Speaking of Scarlet, Wanda Maximoff nearly had a very different look for her alter ego Scarlet Witch. Concept artist Andy Park worked on a number of designs for Marvel and created art for a number of different projects, one of which was for Scarlet Witch herself. In the design, the red and black tones are even furthered, in a riskier outfit which is almost reminiscent of Jean Grey's Phoenix outfit. The design looks awesome and is much more unique, but unfortunately Marvel decided against the darker tone. Another character who almost had a darker look was the god of mischief, Loki. In some amazing concept art, we can see Loki with a Norse-style look, in classic armor, while a wolf lurks ominously behind him.
I've never met this man in my life.
The idea was to make him look more like an old-world god, and it shows. As we all know, Thanos is a certified badass. An example of this is in Infinity War. As Thor strikes him in the chest with Stormbreaker, Thanos looks him dead in the eye and tells him he should have gone for the head.
You should have gone for the head.
Before snapping half of his friends and his family away. Yeah, pretty hardcore. But that scene was almost pretty different. In another piece of awesome concept art, as the Battle of Wakanda plays out, we see the Mad Titan struggling to break free with Hulk, who is actually in Hulk form, holding down his right arm while Cap and T'Challa hold his left, and Natasha clings onto his neck. All the while, Thor comes steaming towards him with Stormbreaker held aloft. The image is reminiscent of the scene in Infinity War where Tony and Co subdue Thanos, only for Peter to ruin it by punching him, and this could be the reason why Marvel opted for going for this concept art, as it was too similar to the prior scene. Or ultimately they just felt like going in a different direction. But either way, it is a superb visual, and it is also great to see Bruce Banner in all of his green glory. Out of the four, Age of Ultron is probably the most underwhelming Avengers movie. That is in part down to its villain, Ultron. While the robotic antagonist was meant to be this big, omnipotent threat, the character felt rather reeled in and never left the impression Marvel wanted. But that could have been very different with early concept art showing off Mega Ultron, with Ultron assuming a giant form made out of thousands of drones, somewhat similar to Mysterio's drone army in Spider-Man Far From Home. This would have pitted the Avengers against a much more dangerous and larger foe. Instead of just numbers of different AI that they knock back one by one, just like an alien army, they would have to fight one big entity. In the concept art, we see Hulk flying for the mouth of the beast, and you have to wonder how that would have turned out on the big screen. It is again unclear why Marvel didn't go out this route, but it is a shame as this would have raised the stakes at the end of Ultron even higher. The visual effects in Doctor Strange are some of the most impressive out of all of the MCU movies. With the trippy kaleidoscope sequence flipping your brain upside down, it can make for some awesome action scenes. Marvel even contemplated adding a magic battle in Infinity War, as Thanos battles the wizard Doctor Strange on the planet Titan. While we did see elements of this in the final battle sequence, the initial concept art looks a lot more trippy with more kaleidoscopic aesthetics and the use of mirroring and color. It would have been awesome to see more of a one-on-one contest between the two, but that goes for a number of heroes. And with the movie already being packed full of content, the heads of Marvel seemingly decided to cut it down. But it is a shame we didn't get to see what would have been an amazing spectacle. When Marvel announced they were making an Ant-Man movie, a lot of people laughed them off, but it ended up being one of the biggest surprise delights in the MCU, providing us with hilarious moments, some touching family dynamics, and some great heist and action scenes. But one of the most disappointing aspects was its villain Yellow Jacket, played by Corey Stoll, with the issue being he was just another run-of-the-mill villain. But there was also nearly an involvement of another villain in the movie. Ant-Man starts off with a flashback, with Hank Pym's decision to leave S.H.I.E.L.D., during which we see past characters like Peggy Carter and Howard Stark. This also nearly included the return of Arnim Zola. Zola, who died shortly after First Avenger, re-uploads his consciousness into a sophisticated AI, and in initial concept art for the movie, we see a comic-accurate Zola who would have sat alongside other S.H.I.E.L.D. members, all the while manipulating the organization for Hydra. Zola may never have gone on to be a primary villain in the movie, but it would have been awesome to see more of the character and perhaps let him become more of an influential character outside of Captain America. As mentioned what feels like 1,000 times before, Infinity War was a pretty damn good movie. But one thing it missed was seeing full-on Hulk as Hulk in the final battle, with us instead settling for Banner suiting up in a Hulkbuster suit designed by Tony Stark. And while it was funny to see Bruce come down with erect Hulk dysfunction, oh, that's written there? That's the joke? Alright. It is always great to see what Hulk does best, smash. Well, in the original concept art, we did nearly see Hulk bust out, literally. In the concept art, we see Hulk tearing through the suit and getting ready to tear his enemies a new one. But Marvel decided against it, feeling that Thanos' victory wasn't just a physical one, but a psychological one too, and in the process, robbed fans of seeing some Hulk smashes in Infinity War, unless you count Hulk getting smashed on by Thanos at the beginning.
That was the plan.
Not a great plan.
What was your favorite concept design? Were there any you wish had made it to the final product? Or are you glad none of them happened? Let us know in the comments below and make sure to subscribe to the channel for this and other great content.